Let us sit in a comfortable meditation posture and close the eyes. Put your focus on the silence that always there, deep in the mind. Connect with that silence. Become the silence. You are the silent witness. And now, from the perspective of this silent witness, watch the conscious thinking mind. Listen to the words of the Yoga Vasishta. Book 4, Chapter 17, continuing with verse 23. Rama asked, Sage, how did the mind of Shukra receive the reflection of the shadowy world and its temporary movement? How did these fluctuations arise and remain in his mind? Vasishta said, Shukra was impressed with the thoughts of the world. From his father's lectures. These impressions remained in his mind like the future peacock resides in the egg. The world is naturally situated in the embryo of the mind for every species of living being. The world gradually evolves from the mind like shoots, sprouts, leaves, and flowers from a seed. Everybody sees in his mind what his heart desires to possess, as in the case of our prolonged dreams. Know it this way, O Ram, that a partial view of the world arises in each person's mind in the same manner as it appears in the mind in a dream at night. Rama said, but tell me, sage, whether the thought and the things thought of simultaneously meet in the mind of the thinker? Or is it only the mind that thinks of the object which it never meets? Vasishta replied, the soiled mind cannot easily unite with the object of its thought. Just as a dirty and cold piece of iron cannot join with a pure red hot one unless it is heated and purified from its impurity. The pure mind and its pure thoughts are readily united with one another as pure waters mix together into one body of the same kind. But muddied water cannot do. Lack of desire constitutes the purity of the mind, which is readily united with immaterial things of the same nature like itself. activity of the mind leads to its enlightenment. And these, being united in one, leads it to the Supreme. Chapter 18, Incarnations of the Living Spirit. Vashishta continued. Living souls, Jivatman, residing in the seeds of material bodies in all parts of the world, suffer from one another according to the differences in their knowledge of themselves. As long as there is no willingness or unwillingness connected with the identity of the living soul, it reposes in a state of rest, not unlike that of sound sleep. But living souls addicted to their wishes identify those wishes and find themselves born here below in their desired shapes. The subtle particles of the living soul and its inclinations run in one channel to the reservoir of life and are thickened into one living being by their combinations. Some are situated apart from one another and dissolve separately. Some are joined together and are born like two gunja fruit growing together. The universe consists of thousands of orbs, like gunja fruit, and contains the combinations of atoms on atoms and those unconnected with one another. The totality forms the great garden of God from it. These particles of the living soul and its inclinations, being joined with one another, become dense and thick and remain in the same place where it has grown. As ideas in the mind fall away, the mind changes, and a different succession of births follow to suit those changes. Thus, every regeneration of the mind in a new life is accompanied by its particular desires and their results. The new life is attended with its proper body unless the mind has been cleared of those thoughts. As pure spirit in the form of vital breath, prana, performs the functions of the body, so the mind, being reborn in a new body, is employed in all the functions of that body. The souls of all living beings are subject to the three states of waking, dreaming, and sound sleep. These states are caused by the mind and not by the body. The soul, in its state as an individual person, cannot give rise to the body and passes under the triple conditions, like seawater gives rise to the waves. The living soul that has attained its intellectual state beyond the conditions of sound sleep is awakened to the knowledge of itself and is released from its rebirth, while the ignorant soul is to be born again. Though knowing and unknowing souls attain the state of deep sleep and resemble each other in kind, yet the unknowing deep sleep soul that is not awakened to the knowledge of its spirituality is doomed to be reborn in the mortal world. Omnipresence consciousness makes it pass through the mind of its next birth and exhibit itself in different forms in all its succeeding and subordinate regenerations. These repeated births and regenerations are as endless as the many layers in the trunk of a plantain tree. The spirit of Brahma is adjacent to and pervades the whole, like the lofty leaves of the same tree. The influence of the divine spirit is as cool as the cooling shade of a plantain tree. It is of its own nature, and it is as unchangeable as the core of the plantain tree, in spite of the changes in all its outer coats and coverings. There is no difference or diversity in the nature of Brahma, the creator, in his repeated and manifold creations of worlds. He, being the seed of the world, shoots forth by his moisture into the form of the expanded tree of the world and becomes the same seed again. So Brahman, taking the form of the mind, becomes the same Brahma by the memories of his mind. Just as the sap of the soil makes the seed bring forth fruit, which reproduces the same seed. So the productive seed proceeding from Brahma displays itself in the form of the world. But as nobody can say what is the cause of the sap in the seed, so no one can tell why the Spirit of God teems with productive seed of Brahma in it. So no one should inquire into the cause of Brahma, because his nature is inscrutable and indefinable. It is improper to say he is this or the other body. One must not attribute causality to what is not the cause, nor impute causation of material bodies to the immaterial Spirit of God that is the prime and supreme cause of all. We must reason rightly regarding what is certain truth and not argue falsely about what transcends our knowledge. The seed casts off its seedy form and assumes the shape of fruit. But Brahman, the seed of all, contains the fruit of the universe in his bosom without laying aside the seed. The seed of the fruit bears a material form, but Brahman, the universal seed, has no form at all. Therefore, it is improper to compare the visible seed with the invisible Brahman, who is beyond all comparison. Brahman evolves himself in this creation and does not produce the world like the fruit from seed. Therefore, know the world is the empty heart of Brahman and is neither born nor unborn of itself. The viewer, viewing the view, is unable to see his inner self because of his consciousness. Engrossed by external objects, is disabled from looking into itself. But of what use is wisdom? To one whose mind labors under the air of water in a mirage. What power has a mirage over a mind that possesses wisdom? As one who sees a clear sky does not see every part of it, and as the eye that looks on all others does not see itself, so we see everything about ourselves outside ourselves. As one who sees a clear sky does not see what is above the sky, so we see ourselves and others as material beings. But we cannot see the inner part of the material soul as wise men do. Brahma, who is as clear as the sky, cannot be perceived despite all our efforts, because the sight of the sky as a visible thing cannot be compared to the invisible Brahman. Such a sight cannot itself present itself to us unless we can see the true form of God. But the sight of subtlest things is far from being visible to the beholder. We see only the outward sign because we cannot see the beholder of the sign. The beholder of God is the only being in existence. And all that can be seen is nothing. God permeates in everything that is visible cannot be seen as a personal God or anything visible as a distinct thing. Because whatever the Almighty King proposes to do, he instantly forms their notions and becomes the same himself. As the sweet saccharine juice of the sugar cane thickens itself into the form of the sugar candy, so the will of God becomes compact in the solid body of the universe. As the moisture of the ground in spring becomes incorporated in plant life, bringing forth flowers and fruit, so the energy of divine consciousness turns itself into the living spirit, which soon appears in a physical form. Everything we see cannot be separated from our ideas of it in our mind. So the inner notion shows itself in the shape of the visible object, like a vision in a dream, which is only representation of thoughts entertained in our minds. The ideas of self and others are like granules in the mind, like grains of salt produced in salty ground from the earth's moisture. So the multitude of thoughts in the mind are exactly like the grains of salt on the seashore. As the serum of the earth appears in various shapes, so the sap of consciousness produces an infinity of ideas and thoughts, growing like trees in the wilderness of the mind. These trees again shoot forth in branches and leaves, of which there is no end. So every other world is like a forest, supplying its sap to innumerable plants, like thoughts in the mind. Consciousness perceives in itself the existence of everything as distinctly as the inherent power of the living soul exhibits itself in creation. Everyone's intellect, by virtue of its former acts and their memories impressed upon the mind, perceives the existence of the world in the same manner as the living soul happens to meet with everything as present before it. Now let's continue. Established in the silent witness, to balance all the karmic traces that have been activated and enlivened by today's reading. We'll do this through the practice of Trimana Sanyama on the esoteric Mahamantra. saying you're deaf.